Interview with Holocaust survivor Risa Stillman by Katie Cloverdons and Daniel Ehrlich Herzog, Sunday, March 3rd, 9:15 a.m., taking place in Scottsdale, Arizona.
So first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with us. We're here because we want to listen to your story and to learn from as much as you're willing to share with us. Beginning from the earliest that you remember all the way to the present, if possible. It would be great if you could narrate your experience to us in the greatest details you feel comfortable with, but it's of course up to you. We can take breaks anytime you wish. We're also happy to come back another day if we don't finish. And just know that you are in control of this interview. And basically, we may ask for more specifics later, but what we really want right now is just to hear you speak without us influencing it by asking questions. So please just speak freely and tell us your story.
Thank you so much. You have no idea how much I appreciate your interest in this subject, which is so important. Time is going by fast, and history seems to fade somewhat. And that's why it's so important that you will be able to carry on the story that from a very, very, very sad and dark time of history that we experienced. Do you want me to start from the beginning?
Yes, please. That would be great.
I was born in Czechoslovakia. I am the fourth child out of 6 children. I was born in 1930, and we lived in a village, in a very nice, close community. There were Jewish people living, Christians, and life was sort of normal. Yes, however, the years passed. In 1939, the war started rumbling in our area. And from then on, I was 9 years old when the war started. And paid little attention to what was happening. However, I still remember seeing in my parents' faces the sadness and the fright that they experienced because what was going on during the war. However, again, we tried to live as normal a life as possible. But in 1942, the place where I was living, Hungary took over. And that was that created a complete change in our lives. And at that time, the war started getting closer to us. However, being 12 years old, you still don't feel that much what's going on in the world. Also, information was not very much available to us. So again, things just went on. However, in 1942, when Hungary came in, things started changing a lot. There came out some restrictions on Jews, on Jewish people. First, we had to wear a yellow star sewn out on your outer jacket. we experienced curfews. And also, the food was getting to be in very short supply. My three siblings were no longer living at home. My brother, who was the oldest, had gone to another city, who was an apprentice in a tailor shop. My sister moved to Budapest and got a job there, and my brother David followed them. So there were three of us, three children left at home. My younger brother was 11. My little sister was 6 or 7 years old. Anyway, and from then on, life was very difficult. Food was in short supply. We had curfew, and also the fact is that you were not allowed to own a radio. So we had very little news coming in as to what was happening in other parts. However, there are some people who were able to break through some of the places, and so they came and brought some news as to what was happening in other places, and that and what the political situation was in regarding the future of the Jewish people. So and we heard that people are being deported and people are being arrested and so forth. But anyway, later in 1943, I went to stay with an aunt who was like about 13 kilometers from where I lived. This aunt of mine was sick, and her daughter needed help, so I went to stay with them. And there, that's when everything opened up to me. We had a nice, we lived in a nice house, and because it was a spacious place, one of the German officers took part of the our living quarters, and we felt a little uncomfortable with it, but we hardly ever saw him, and he never spoke to us. The way that everything kept going, they came. There was a rumor that their Jews were being taken to the ghetto. So the place I was living in at that time was Zurich, and what happened was a large section of the town was sectioned off and turned into a ghetto. In April of 1944, it was the day after Passover. We got a knock on the door, and two officers came in, and they said, "You have 15 minutes to pack and you have to come with us. So we did. We did as we were told. We got to the ghetto, and by then there were a lot of people already there, and we again we tried. We had to. Everything was left at home. We just packed whatever we were able to take with us, and so then after that, we stayed in the ghetto, I believe, for about 6 weeks. Everything was planned to perfection. We had to stay in the ghetto because they were rounding up uh, uh, other Jews from surrounding areas, from towns and villages, and brought them to this focal point. And once we had they accomplished that part of it, and everybody was there. It was we got a notice the night before that we will be leaving the following morning and pack everything. Which is, well, of course, we didn't have much to take with us. The important, excuse me, the important thing was to bring some, a little food that we have. We And that was in May of 1944. We again got uh, got our little belongings, and we. I remember. I recall it was on a Sunday, and it was a very warm, nice May day, and we were all lined up in rows and started walking. Again, we never knew where we were going. We when we were out on the street, I I felt very. It was very eerie. It seemed nobody else was out. You look back and all you saw is columns of people walking, but there were no pedestrians. None of the people, evidently, it was a curfew for the people, but the local people that were living to not to be out at that time, because everything was done pretty much in secret. We were taken to the railroad station, and once we got there, everything was moving very fast. There were uh, there were soldiers, and it was noisy, and people were crying, and babies were crying, and but everything they just got to uh, uh, they got everybody up, and they actually there was this long train, and everybody was put in the uh, uh, actually people were shoved into a cattle a car, and once we got in there, you got in the cattle car, and there must have been about 60 or 70 people there, and they slammed the door. And when they slammed that door, I had such my heart sank, because first of all it was dark in there, and it just felt you have no way of getting out. And so that was our first experience, and we thought how bad it was. Sanitary, we had no water. There were 2 buckets for all the people for to use. It was terrible. Um, we were thirsty people. Some people and the only light we had was from the little um oh God lit, I can't think of the name of it. Where if oh gosh, and on the ceiling on by the window, and so so uh, we were on that train for for 3 or 4 days. We got fine. The train kept on going and and made stops frequently, and so and that at that time to pick up more people from other towns. We finally got to our destination. Anyway, after the train stopped, um, and I I heard a beautiful music playing, and I thought to myself, well, this place can't be too bad. That sounds awfully nice. And so when the doors opened up, um, you had a hard time adjust your eyes to the sunshine because you were in darkness for so long. We got off the train. They told us that to leave everything on the train, whatever we have, it will be delivered to us. We got off the train, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people. I saw people uh, in prison uniforms, the gray and white stripes, and uh, and there were a lot of soldiers who were dressed very meticulous outfits with white gloves and and the but and they had dogs, uh, uh, German shepherds, and uh, they uh, it was horrible. It was bedlam. Everybody lined up. People were crying and shouting and screaming, and I guess that's why they had the music to then some of that all that noise that the crying and screaming. Anyway, we were asked to line up in 5. They asked women on one side, men on the another side, and then an officer came by and he started making selections, who's going to the left or who's going to the right, and we really didn't know what the next thing was going to be. We got once we were selected, when we got off the train, they took the people who were not able to stand, people who were sick. They dumped them on the side of the platform, and I saw my aunt was there, and so I started going towards her in my uh, uh, my her daughter Emma grabbed me by her arm and by my arm, and she grabbed me back in line. So I said, but we can't leave her here. And she said, she'll be okay, don't worry. We were taken, once the selection was over, we were taken to a room, and I remember it was a big room. It has long tables, and there were women and men working in the um, uh, uh, prison uniforms. They cut our hair. They shaved our hair off, and were tattooed. I actually we kept looking at each other with our hair off. Almost nobody recognized each other. And then, of course, we were all tired and hungry. We were given a shower, and we were told to get a pair of shoes. There was a big pile of shoes, and to get a pair of shoes. And we got the address, and nothing else. And then we were taken to our destination, which was going to be our quarters. And so it was within walking distance. And we walked over to the gates. Well, all this time we were with guards already, and everybody um, everybody was quiet and frightened because we didn't know what. Yeah. Anyway, we got to the gate and we looked up, and there was a nice, beautiful sign out at the gate, and we walked in, which said in German, Arbeit macht frei, but which meant work will make you free. So we got it. We got there, got through, and there were other people in the camp already. And the first thing they told me is that the fence is electrified, and to stay away from it, not to get too close. We, being hungry and thirsty, we were looking forward to get something to eat. But first we were given our quarters. We were taken to a barrack and assigned a bunk bed, and there were about 6 or 8 people to a bunk bed, and we had no pillows, of course, no blankets. Then we went outside, and you had to line up to be counted, and that took place every day, twice a day actually, in the morning and at night. And then we got our rations, which was a piece of bread, which was about 6 or 8 ounces, and some soup, which was mostly broth. And so so I started eating the bread. So one of the gals who has been there already for a while, she says, you better not eat all of it, because this is what you are going to have until until the following evening because, yeah, and that turned out to be our daily diet, a piece of bread. And in the morning, you had black coffee, and in the evening, you got a piece of bread and some broth. I would in the beginning. I was there for a whole week. We just the camp seemed so big, and I looked around trying to find it other people that you knew. At the same time, uh, you you had uh, you were not allowed to stay in your barrack from morning even until the evening because we were all outside, and there were SS women marching around with dogs and always shouting terrible things, and or if they again there's no people were sitting on the ground. We were all sitting on the ground, and so that you went through, you cried a lot, you didn't know what happened to your family, you don't know, you didn't know what was going on and how long this is going to take. And at the same time, I saw there was um, there was a fire, there was a chimney, there was smoking that day and night. There were black smoke coming out of it, and uh, and finally I asked one of the people. I thought it was there was some plant, and I asked one of the people, uh, why is that fire uh, going on day and night? And so this gal says to me, "That's a crematorium." I said, "What's a crematorium?" And she was telling that that's where they're burning the people. Well, that was devastating. Anyway, uh, he, after being there a week, I guess we got a little used to it. Um, we had a selection again, and uh, they were taking people, selecting people for work, and what I was among them. So in the morning, we uh, we walked up to the main gate and uh, taken first they taken to a field that was outside of Krakow, and we were digging trenches. Now there we were also guarded uh, by soldiers with dogs, and um, very strict. Um, you worked from morning, no break. They the soldiers would just walk around and always shout, "Work harder, work faster," and they would just hit a person on the head with their rifle butt. So, and that um, was very because it was backbreaking, and we'd come home muddy and dirty, and we'd go and wash up, but we didn't even have a towel to dry your hands with or wash your face with. And So again, there were people from all over. There were people from Greece and Slovakia and Ukraine and Poland. And uh, and as time went on, we were getting weaker because we kept on losing weight. I didn't know where my parents were, what happened to them, whether they were alive, whether they were in another camp. So we did a lot of uh, crying, a lot of sadness. Um, we had once a week, we had selection, and there was a doctor who came, and his name was Dr. Mengele. And as time went by on, they selected, as people got lost more weight, they selected the ones who were too weak to stand or too weak to work. They were taken away. And sometimes there was two sisters where they would take one sister would be taken away. And it was so sad because they pleaded uh, to not to take her, but it was to no avail. At the same time, again, you're always afraid uh, the uh, the dogs barking at you, and it was it came to a point after a couple of months. It came to a point where a lot of people couldn't take it. A lot of people committed suicide. They ran to the fence and they committed suicide. And uh, so that job lasted for me till the end of September or the beginning of October. And when you came home from work, you sat around outside in the yard because you were not allowed to go in the barracks. Again, you had to stand um, to be counted uh, every every uh, every day, morning and night. Um, after sometimes you would meet some friends and you would make friends with somebody, so you felt you were not so alone. But that didn't last because many times the friends, they were either transferred to another job or they were just taken away. There was a girl about 16. Her foot was gangrened. And I remember uh, they the pain. She was in such horrible, horrible pain, and there was no help for her. So finally, uh, I believe they didn't report. They didn't want to report it because they knew that they would take her away. And finally, she was taken away. We never heard from her again. Um, after after Auschwitz, we were again rounded up. Uh, there was a group of us that was selected to go to work. So we were we were taken again to the railway station, and we never knew where we were going. Um, After and this must have been like in October, and we got on the train, and when we arrived at our destination, which was the next day because we traveled at night, we ended up in a camp said Bergen-Belsen, and there that camp was even worse because it was just there were thousands of people in that camp walking around aimlessly, and everybody was and thin and anyway. There, our job was to gather potatoes in the fields, and so it must have been like about late September or early October, and we were told that uh, to take a potato is not it would be punishable by death. You're not supposed to steal any potatoes. And so we were worked in the potato field. That too was sort of backbreaking. And um, it, one day there were men prisoners there as well. And so one day I I heard this guy, he was fixing a rooftop on the barn, and he was as he's hammering, he was singing, and I thought, so I asked one of the ladies there. I said, he doesn't stop singing; he keeps on singing. And she said to me, "Well, today is uh, the whole Yom Kippur, the holiday, high holiday." And I thought to myself, how wonderful that he still has such strong belief that he was, uh, and we gathered the potatoes and then and put them in a barrel, and then the men prisoners would come in and pick them up and take them down to the farm. And so one day we were asked to go down to the farmhouse, which we did. And when we got down there, we saw that a one of the prisoners was being beaten by a guard, and he was beaten to death. And once he stopped beating him, I recall hearing this him a shot, and so I thought, what was we were wondering what was his crime. Well, his crime was that he stole some potatoes, and that's what we were told, that that's why they had us watch. And again, uh, you hunger is constantly with you, loneliness, fear, and and not knowing and being alone. Um, After that, we were taken to another place where uh, to a town named called Braunschweig, where we were working, clearing bombed out the debris off the streets in the in residential areas. That this was like December, and it was freezing cold. We had no winter clothes. I had it, my dress and a thin little jacket. We were on that job till the end of February or March. One day, and you you just feel that nobody cares, nobody does anything, and the world is doesn't know what's happening in God. You wonder if you'll ever get out of there. We one day we were working in a residential backyard, and a lady who was living in a cellar came out with a pair of stockings, and she motioned to me to pick up the stockings. Well, that was a gift from heaven. First of all, it made me feel that there are people who care, and there are people with a heart. And that was the most wonderful gift of kindness that I had experienced. And so, again, um, our living quarters at that time was a horse barn, which was huge, and we slept on a cement floor. There was a thin layer of straw. We had no blankets. There was no heat. You froze all day and you froze all night. There, every day, you saw some bodies carried out because people just died from hunger, starvation, and they froze to death. Every day when we went out, there would be some bodies, 3, 4, 5 bodies lined up. So our circle was getting smaller and smaller. My next job, this was towards the end of, must have been, towards the end of February. We went to work in, we were taken to another place, and there we worked in the ammunition plant. The plant was built in a salt mine, which was just an amazing thing. You had to take the elevator down, and the place was huge. Even I was thinking, how could they have done, such a huge project? And it seemed, like I said, it was just perfect. And yeah, so I was on the night shift. By the way, the food never changed. You were not able to get a change of clothes. You still had the same dress you got when you arrived. And so And there I experienced another act of kindness. I had a terrible sore on the back of my foot, and working in the salt mine made it even worse with the infection. And when we were working with in the salt mine, when we were in the ammunition factory, we were working with German civilians, and there was a gentleman sitting next to me. Of course, they were not allowed to speak to us, or and sitting next to me, and he saw the pain in my face, and so he motioned to me and whispered. He said there was some benzene, which is an equivalent to like alcohol, probably, that to clean the tools with for us, to clean out my wound with that, which I did, and you know that helped. It took, yeah, it actually cleaned it out, and it healed the wound. So, and so we worked there. Like I said, I was on the night shift. It was a little, our quarters were a little better. It wasn't, we were not out in the cold. We may have been, this may have been an old schoolhouse at one time or whatever. And I never learned the name of the town that we were in. Yeah. So we we were there till about, yeah, till the end of April. And of course, again, there I recall one of the girls had she just lost her mind, and it was so sad. She would walk around in this room, and the guard unfortunately would just beat her with, with the strap. Her back was just back and practically raw. And finally they took her away. Who knows what they did with her. And so that was the yeah. So again, so I think towards the very end of April, they again took us in a train, and we never knew where we were going or what. Everything was, and there was nobody. You never spoke to a guard. You never addressed a guard. You never asked anything of a guard. That's how how scared we were all. We got on a train. This was an open cattle car. It was spring, and it was nice out. And so we just traveled for about a few hours, maybe a few hours, and then the train stopped in a forest, and then the train would be going back and forth. By then, hardly anybody could stand up. The cabin was packed. We hardly had standing place. There too, a lot of people, just died. And so at night we were traveling, and the train would go a little, come back, and finally one morning this lasted for about 2 days, I think. Finally, one morning, we got off the train, and and we were taken to a excuse me, to an open field. And lined up. It was a beautiful summer day, and uh, it was interesting because there seemed to be so many more. There were many more soldiers around there at that time, uh, and also uh, we stood lined up, and uh, there were machine guns lined up as several machine guns um, set up, and uh, after a few hours, I saw an officer on a motorcycle come by, and he handed a piece of paper to one of the guards. And after that, after he left, uh, we were ordered to get back on the train, and we went for a short ride, and got off, and we noticed that at this point there were um, no SS guards. They were the Wehrmacht, which is the regular German army, and so we were walking again. We didn't know where we were going, so, and um, we got to a place, and by the way, when I this was an open uh, uh, cabin, and uh, we were able to see outside, and we saw that we were at a regular station, and it said Hamburg, and that was, you know, you always wondered what's going on. Why are they bringing us here? Well, as it happened, uh, we were liberated, but we didn't know it, because when that soldier, that officer, handed that paper to the guard in the forest, uh, in the field, uh, uh, that's that was he got um, the orders to send us. Uh, Actually, from what I understand, those machine guns were for us, because afterwards I had read that Hitler ordered, what if the war would be is lost, to that all the prisoners should be uh, disposed with, and so that so I found out that those machine guns were uh, meant for us. And so, yes, so we were taken to again, in a place. It must have been at one time uh, um, a um, a place where this for soldiers, where soldiers were staying, and uh, we got some food. The first uh, uh, piece of bread and some food in 3 days. And uh, we still didn't know we didn't know what was happening. The only thing is, well, another interesting thing was that as we were walking from the station, there was there were a group of um, SS women shouting horrible, dirty Jews and all the stuff. And this guard that was answered them. He told he said, "Shut up, you stupid cows," or something to that effect. And we heard that, and that didn't sound, you know, uh, that sounded quite different than what we expected. And so uh, so that evening, I did ask one of the guards where we were going from there. And he said, "Well, the war is over. You're going home." And we were liberated and we didn't even know it. And so from there, we were taken uh, to Denmark. We were liberated by the Red Cross, International Red Cross. And uh, yeah, and I think uh, one of the negotiators for the release was um, God, I can't think of his name at the moment. Um, he was the head of the Swedish Red Cross, and Count Falkenberg, I believe. It'll have to come to me. I can't think of his name right at this moment. Yeah, and so from from uh, uh, from there, from Germany, we were taken to Sweden the next day, and the following day, we were, of course, we were fed, and everybody got sick because we were not used to, food. But and after that, um, we we were taken um, to Sweden by ferry from Denmark, where we were. My God, we we were dirty. We had lice. So it was horrible. Where we got cleaned up, taken showers, got examined, a medical examination. A lot of people had tuberculosis and they were sick. And after that, we got clean clothes. I can't tell you what it felt like to have something clean, first of all, to be washed. Didn't take a shower or a bath for over a year. And um, um, so, um, so then after that, we were taken to a town called Landskrona in Sweden, and where we were um, quarantined for 3 months. And the Swedish people were wonderful. And that's when it all opened up. We started thinking about um, where our families are and what uh, uh, what do we do from here and such. and it was, uh, and only then did we also learn all the horrific things that were happening in the camp, in Auschwitz, and throughout. Uh, uh, we didn't realize the enormity of it, and I mean, ours was suffering, but so many other. Um, my my mother, my father. Uh, I had a sweet little sister, and my brother, and a younger brother, and of course they all perished. They all were there in Germany, and to this day, I think of them, and it still hurts, that kind of death that they had to endure. And yeah, so um, it was, you know, you you go through this, and I was 14 years old at that time. I was 15 when I was liberated, and at that time I said, I hope that the world has learned a lesson and there'll never be another war. But unfortunately, that's not true. It never stopped. And so, do you have any questions?
Yeah. First, do you want to take a break now, or?
Yeah, that would be nice.
So, what can you tell us about your time in Sweden and your time in the UN, in the US?
Sweden was wonderful. First of all, when I told you the first place we went was Landskrona, and it's right on the ocean, just lovely. And uh, we we were quarantined for 3 months, and they took a lot of young people had tuberculosis, and they were sent to a sanatorium. The rest of us were just recovering, um, trying to trying to try to become, you know, a, a worthy human being again. And 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 but it was nice because we were in quarantine. All the young people used to come around the fence, and they would talk to us. They would be coming home from school and talk to us. And of course, we couldn't talk Swedish, but some could spoke German, so we could understand some, something. Yeah, the Swedish people were wonderful. They were really kind, and we were under the auspices of the Red Cross, and so we couldn't stay in one place too long because um, I guess they needed the place in Landskrona. They needed the place for whatever they used before. So then we went to another place. Um, it was called Reftele, yeah, small town. And again, uh, I I learned how to ride a bike there, And we, again, the Swedish people were just overly kind. They invited us to their homes. We made lasting friends. And I learned how to ride a bicycle there. And the best part was that you know we we started uh, we started getting, uh, we had recovered. We started enjoying the company of a lot of young people and such, right? And so then after a few months, there were various ages. Uh, After a few months, we uh, they the people started thinking as to, a future. So they had sent a lot of young people, they called them felahim, from Israel to talk to us because they were recruiting young people to go to Israel. So, uh, uh, quite a few of my friends left and went to Israel. And then uh, we were um, we were again, and also uh, after a while, uh, if somebody wanted to stay there, the older girls they left and they got jobs or they went back home to their homes. Uh, the younger ones, we had uh, we didn't have a regular school, but we did have a teacher who was also from Vienna, Mr. Sobel, and so we took some classes, and again, they were absolutely wonderful. There were, I think there were like about 15,000 refugees. They called them refugees that um, were taken, went to Sweden uh, after liberation. Yeah, and uh, like I said, right, and it was just, you almost felt like a kid again. Again, I learned how to ski there, and so after uh, after about several months or so, uh, people started thinking, no, we can't stay in Sweden all the time. Where so I had written, I had some an aunt, like uh, an aunt and a couple uncles in uh, oh, America, and I thought I'm sure they want to know what's happened to us. So I wrote to them a letter and I didn't know the address. I only knew Fanny Hoffman, Cleveland. And I wrote, that's the way I addressed it. And believe it or not, the letter did get to her because I guess it went to the post office, turned it over to um, uh, Jewish Family Service, and they found Fanny Hoffman. And so, yeah, but I too had decided to go to Israel, and uh, and my aunt wrote to me from America. She said, "Well, you're the only person that has a chance to come. Why don't you come here first, and you go to Israel if you don't like it here?" but of course, I stayed because I liked the family and it was nice. Yeah, yeah. Um, Sweden is a beautiful country, um, and and the people couldn't be nicer. And yeah, um, well, at one time we were in a place called Visings, no, Sjöberga, and and that was they used that place for uh, a camp, a children's camp. Um, uh, so, and we were there in the winter time. So in the summertime, we went to another place, but uh, two or three other girls and I stayed to help with the kids and work in the camp. And that was a lot of fun, we went boating and such. Yeah. And uh, it was more like normal life again. Yeah. And yeah. Uh, so then I applied for a visa. I discovered I had like an aunt and three uncles and such. Um, and they sent me papers to come to the United States, and which was accepted. And I waited 2.5 years for my number to come up. And so in 1948, February 22nd, I arrived in America, and I went to uh, live with a cousin in Youngstown, Ohio. And my cousin had two little girls, uh, and um, and they had a lovely home, and they they were very happy to have me, and I'm still in touch with all of them. I mean, we're all very close, and uh, so I stayed with them for about a year and a half, I think, and then I went to Cleveland. And oh, by the way, yeah, after being there for 3 months, I felt my English is fairly good. I'm going to get it, I wanted to get a job. After all, I was 18 by that point. And so I got a job in a supermarket. And I really, I loved working. I loved being independent. I loved working and making uh, some money, so I didn't have to live with somebody else. And uh, so uh, that was always a very good experience. And then I went to Cleveland, and I got a job at the May Company, and I I I also loved Cleveland, and uh, I met I met my husband there, and uh, this was in 1949. We got married in 1950, and uh, he uh, my husband had just uh, uh, taken a temporary job at the May Company because he was he had graduated in journalism, but and he wrote advertising. And what happened, that section had closed down, so he was between jobs. And so he got a job in at the May Company, and that's when we met. And after that, we moved to Lorain, Ohio, which was a small town. And our son was born there in 1952. And I did, I kept house. I volunteered. I raised our son. And we had a lot of friends, many friends. It was a beautiful life, yeah. And yeah, and we, I then in 1969, my husband had a heart attack, and he died. So, and Mitch was 16 years old, yeah. And I mean, I loved America. I um, I just felt very bad when people were demonstrating against things and such, because I was not used to that. But yeah, America definitely has been good to me, and I've appreciated it, and uh, I love living here, and uh, yeah, and uh, Lorraine is a small was a small town where there were like about 80,000 people there when I first moved there, and uh, we had a very, very close knit community and close friends, and like I said, I volunteered there. I worked with disabled children, and just had a very normal, nice, uh, nice life, and of course, I also brought my sister who lived in Canada. Uh, I lived in Budapest. Uh, they came and they arrived in Canada in 1956, and uh, I mean, we traveled. So my husband and I did a little traveling and such. Uh, Nothing, outstanding, but just had a very, very nice and happy life. It was beautiful.
Oh, and why did you come to Arizona?
Oh, well, it's interesting. Well, a very close friends of mine moved to Arizona because um, the gentleman of the family had asthma. So they moved here. They had 5 children, and I had nieces and nephews who live in California. So uh, one year, um, I went to visit one of my nieces in California, and uh, um, and uh, I stopped also in Arizona to visit my friends. When I came back, my son said, Steve and I want to go for a vacation. A friend of his, we don't know where to go. So I told him, jokingly, why don't you go to Scottsdale? You have sunshine all the time. You can play all the golf you want. And he did. And while he was here, he filled out a resume and took it to Payne Weber. And he came home and he said, I'm moving to Arizona. And so yeah, about three years later, he was after me. Why didn't you come out here? So I did, yeah. And I love it, yeah. I don't like the summers, just like you, but I love, yeah. Right, yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Okay, would you mind if we asked you some other questions about what you've told us so far?
No,
Um, so first of all, what languages were spoken in your home, and did you learn any others over the years?
yeah. In the home, it was spoken Yiddish. In my village, it was spoken Russisch, which I spoke. In the beginning, it was Czech, but the Czechs were there. So I spoke Czech and Russisch. And then the Hungarians came in, and I spoke Hungarians. And then I lived in Sweden. I spoke Swedish. And I spoke some German, yeah, but unfortunately I've forgotten, yes. So I spoke like about 5 languages at one point. Yeah,
Very impressive.
exactly.
What was school like for you? Did you enjoy it?
No, I didn't. We were, how should I put it? It was just, it was a time where the Jewish kids were not liked, okay? So no, I did not. But I um I did enjoy, I went to night school here quite a bit, and uh, of course we had some classes I really did not have much of a formal education, but perhaps some here and there, and I mostly learned, by from reading and living.
And did things change dramatically under Hungarian occupation, both in school and the village?
Yes, they did. Yes, yes.
How so, may I ask?
Well, they were allies of Germany, and uh, they uh, they they did not treat the Jewish kids right. We had to sit in the back of the class. Um, they would not call on you if you raised your hand. It was not comfortable.
What were your parents and siblings like?
Well, my older siblings, I really can't tell you too much about because they were quite a bit older. So I only remember my brother Nate when he would come home for a visit. And I thought he was very, very nice. My brother David, he was closer to my age. He actually was about 6 years, 4 years older than I was. yeah, he, yeah, he was uh, very, he was a very kind person, okay? And my sister Helen, uh, she had moved, she went to Budapest at the age of 17. And uh, uh, she, so I really didn't spend, don't remember them at home too much. Uh, and then, of course, my little brother and sister, they were, sweet, sweet, wonderful kids, beautiful kids. And but later on, we were very close because my brother and sister-in-law, they moved here, yeah, and my sister, and eventually my brother David came. So we were a very close family. Um, my American family was wonderful, and um, we are we're still close with the kids, and families. Some live in Atlanta, some live in Pittsburgh, yeah, and we're in New York, right? So, yeah.
What about your parents? What were they like?
My parents were, they were strict. They also, they, they taught us right from wrong. Uh, you, they taught us to respect the older, the elders. Uh, they taught us compassion. They were wonderful. But at the same time, you had to toe the line. They were strict, yeah. No, they were, uh, they, they, yeah. And then don't forget, we were quite poor. And I remember them worrying so much. And and I also remember a quote from my mother when she learned how terrible things are in the world, and you know, and not knowing what awaits us because anti-Semitism, it was, I mean, they heard about uh, what was happening, in Poland and in Ukraine and all that, where Jews were getting shot, and you've heard about the Holocaust by bullets, and so I remember sitting with my mom once on a little porch that we had in the house, and there was this saying in Yiddish, um, to God, frighten us, but don't punish us. Does that make sense to you? Yeah. She, she was praying, she was pleading with God, frighten us, but don't punish us. Yeah. So, yeah, I do remember that so vividly.
Moving forward a bit, how separated were you from the rest of society in the ghetto? Did you have any contact at all with the outside world, or?
Oh no. Uh, once you were, I think the only time uh, some men were allowed to go out, or somebody was allowed to go out, was under guards, and when they need to do some shopping, some food. But otherwise, yeah, you were under guard, you were separated.
Do you remember what daily life was like there?
In the ghetto,
Mhm.
yeah. It was just, I remember what I did, you know, I would, I, we didn't have a room, we didn't have bedrooms, we just slept on the floor. And, I remember I'd go out, it was, in spring, I'd go out and walk in the garden, and then go in, and go back in, play with the with the little children. And, yeah, otherwise people were just sitting around talking, uh, you know, what's happening, what's gonna come, whether this all will get, everybody was frightened.
Um, and how scarce was food then? Were you still very hungry in the ghetto?
What,
How scarce was food? Like how
you mean the ghetto?
yeah.
Um, I don't remember being hungry there, honey. No, I think there's always, you could bring in some bread or so. I don't recall being hungry there at all.
Moving forward again to the camps, are there any, you mentioned some people you remember specifically. Are there any others you remember? Prisoners or guards or outside people that you maybe talked to or had
You mean at the ghetto?
at the camps, any of the camps that you were at?
No. I just remember one thing that it wasn't so nice.
Mhm.
Uh, when we worked in Braunschweig, and um, uh, anyway, uh, it was a very cold day. You're hungry. You come back, and so you're sort of looking forward to the little soup that you're going to get. So as we were lined up to uh, get, see, we had these little tin little uh, um, pots, and you you held on to it because you need, that's the only possession you had, okay? And so as as the capo, the woman, a capo was somebody under the SS woman. She was also a prisoner, but she had a better life. She didn't have to wear a uniform. She had more food and all that. But she was helping out. As she was ladling out the soup, most of it was spilling back. And when she put it in my little pot, it was just a tiny bit there. And that's the first time I ever spoke up. I said, "Can I have a little more? Because most of it spilled out." And she grabbed the little pot, whatever was there, she emptied it. She slapped my face, and that was it. And I remember crying all night that night. Yeah.
Um, and how were you treated by the other prisoners, generally speaking?
You know what? I I mean, sometimes there were some little skirmishes between people, but everybody pretty much helped, to themselves. They really, maybe people would say, "Oh, look at her," or whatever, but where I was, there wasn't any fighting between the prisoners or anything like that.
And do you think your age affected how people treated you at all?
I'm sorry?
Do you think your age, the fact you were like 15, affected how they treated you?
No, I don't think so. No. because most of us were about 2, 3, 4 years, difference. Most of us were young. So, right, yeah. But I have to tell you something interesting about that. I had a very good friend who was about the same age, a man uh, who was telling me the story. And he was from Poland, and he was about 14. And he was, he was daunted, and uh, he was having a very hard time and all that. And not just him, but all the boys in his group. And so he was saying he as when his life was, if I could only get my hands on that, I'd beat. I just want to beat him up. I want to pay him back. So then the Russians uh, liberated Auschwitz in January of 1995. And some of the SS uh, did not escape, run away or whatever. But there were a couple of them that were captured. And so the Russians say, okay, boys, go at it, do it, go at them. And he said, a lot of them went and they just punched them and beat them, And Henry said he walked up to him and he looked at him. His boots were muddy. They were no longer that shiny. His face was dirty. He was always, at the SS, they were always so elegant and so clean and so beautiful. His uniform was dirty. His face was smudged. He says, I walked up to him, I took a look, and then I turned around and walked away, never touched him. He just didn't, all of a sudden, he doesn't have that power that he had before.
And then moving on to liberation, what were you thinking when the SS finally handed you over to the Wehrmacht in 45?
Well, it was a bit hard to believe. And it didn't seem, it was like a dream. It just didn't seem real. Okay. But it was. And it's, I feel, I felt happy. I felt glad. And but it took a while for it to sink in. I mean, and we didn't jump, hooray, we'll free or anything like that. No, it's just, yeah. Um,
Did you ever consider going home where you were from when you were before the war?
no, there's nothing to go back to.
Do you ever regret not going to Israel when you say a lot of your friends in Sweden went
I
to Israel?
didn't. No, I didn't. No.
And when do you think you first felt safe after liberation? When did you first start to relax, or perhaps?
Um, you know, you still had you, I felt it was real right away, okay? And, but the thing is that you didn't get your life back because only then did we learn of the horrors that people suffered, of the horrors that people did. And no, look, it's something that's with you always, but you don't dwell on it, and you live with it. I mean, uh, there are things. I mean, there are things that I know. Somebody once said something about me to my husband or something, and my husband said, "Well, she was never a kid," you know. So, which is true. I mean, I I don't I don't laugh at stupid jokes. I can't. Okay. Um, there are things that are important to me and things that are very unimportant. Because I once said, and that was after liberation, I said, if I only had bread and water, I'll never complain. And I never have. So material things have never been important to me. Uh, I've tried my best to live a life where I was able to help other people, and I still do. And uh, it, and again, it's with you, but you don't, uh, because it's something that you can't get rid of. Okay, I've forgotten about it. Uh, but uh, again, you you just, I mean, I don't get thrills from from some little things that others, you know. I don't get a thrill when somebody buys a beautiful dress. I buy the dress because I need it, and I buy it because, okay, I want to look decent. Does it make any sense to you? Yeah. But I'm saying things don't make me happy. I like it when I can make somebody else happy. I'm okay with that. Yeah. And yeah, and and I've been very lucky. I had um, my husband was um, he was a wonderful person. Okay, and my family here have been wonderful, really beautiful, beautiful, lovely family. Uh, and then I've had some wonderful, wonderful friends. Some of them that may have not appreciated as much, but yeah. So I can't complain. I've had a good life, and uh, I've tried never to hurt a person, and I hope I succeeded.
Um, Moving forward to Sweden, who did you meet in Sweden? Were you especially close with anyone?
Uh, Not really. No, not really. But just good friends.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you mean from my group?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. Everybody went in different directions afterwards.
Mhm.
We corresponded for a while and such, but yeah, that was it. Yeah.
So you say that when you're in Sweden, you started figuring out all the things that the Nazis did to Jews in other parts of Europe. Um, how was it talked about? Like, did you talk about it with other people, with other Holocaust survivors?
Yeah.
The Swedes ever referred to it?
No, the Swedes did not. No, just from other, yeah. Uh, I learned more even after I got you. Yeah.
How did you get to Sweden? What was the trip like?
Oh, see, we were um, I guess it wasn't too far from Copenhagen, right? And we just got got in the ferry, and it only took a couple hours, I think, couple hours.
So then arriving to the United States, the visa took a very long time. How soon did you settle in once you arrived?
It took me a while. As lovely as everything was, I did miss my friends in Sweden, and yeah, it took me a while, yeah, uh, and uh, it took, even though everybody was so nice and gracious and such, yeah, uh, I was lonely, yeah, but then little by little, you start making acquaintances and friends.
What was your wedding like?
Oh, it was very small. It was just immediate family. Yeah, very small. We couldn't afford it.
And at what point were you reunited with your brother and sister? What was that like?
Oh, that was nice. The first thing was my sister in 1956. Um, Hungary. Um, Hungary was under communism after the war. Okay, and in 1956, the Hungarians had an uprising, and a lot of people at that time left Hungary, and um, uh, they actually they went to um, Austria first, to Vienna, and from there a lot of them went to Canada and to the United States. So yes, so then after they got here, they went to Toronto, and yeah, we became very close. In fact, she has a daughter here, one daughter in Budapest, and the daughter and I are. Her daughter and I are. My sister just died last December, and her daughter Eva, she was here last month, right? Her daughter and I are very close. Yeah. No, it was very nice, and I tried to help them, when they needed help, and they were fine.
What was motherhood like for you? I guess still, what is motherhood like for you?
I love motherhood. I I was only 22, I think, when yeah, my son was born, and uh, I I enjoyed it. Um, my husband was 10 years older than I was, so he was very handy and very helpful, right? But I enjoyed, yeah, I enjoyed motherhood.
Um, and then what was your initial impression of the US? How did it differ from either Czechoslovakia or Sweden?
Well, at that time I didn't notice that much difference, but uh, I I sure noticed it later. Yeah, uh, I I loved it. I loved it from the very beginning. I mean, I didn't I wasn't immersed in any of the politics. I'm sure it existed at that time between the Republicans and the Democrats and all that. but I loved it from the very beginning. Crime was nothing like what it is now. And, of course, yeah. And just, I thought people were very nice people. They were very kind, very nice, and and then just have all this wealth. You know, you walk into a grocery store, it's overwhelming to find all the hundreds and thousands of items. So yeah, it's I still love it. I still love the United States. I still think it's the best country in the world.
And then moving ahead a little bit, what is your life like now? What do you spend your time doing now?
um, I I still see friends. I have people into dinner. I do my daily chores. I go for walks, and unfortunately, my eyesight is not good, so I can't read. And but uh, I still drive. I don't drive a long distance, but I can still drive in the neighborhood. Yeah, and I'm fine. I do my own housework, and, just to keep that going.
Um, and in reference to your son, how do you think perhaps your experiences influenced how you raised him? I was talking about earlier.
Um, I, I, I don't know whether I had that much. I just raised him to be a decent, honest human being. And that's what he is. He really is. He's um, uh, he's good. He's got a good heart. He's active. He takes care of his health. He loves to go to the gym. Yeah, and yeah, he has a daughter that he adores, and he's a good person, right? Yeah.
And what made you decide to share your story today, but also back when you did your first interview in the 90s?
Um, well, today I hadn't spoken in years about it. Okay, and then later on, I just realized how important it is. So it's just the past couple of years that I have, opened up. Number one, I didn't, uh, I didn't speak about it because I didn't want to make other people sad, and I didn't want people to pity me. This is from the beginning. Without realizing, I thought, I think I just thought at that time, I wanted to be normal like everybody else, okay? So I don't have to share these horrors with them. Uh, that was one reason. But then as time went on, I just started, be aware of it past few years. That there's so many deniers. There's so many people who are denying that this happened. That's number one. Number two, if your kids are the future, and it's important that you be aware of what it is, what took place. Because I mean, what I told you is just a minute um, a fraction of what transpired. I mean, if you read books and such, and I'm sure you have, there's some horror, pretty bad horrors. Yeah. So it's important because you're the leaders now. And so it's important for you to know and to pass on the story to others.
Well, thank you for having the courage to talk to us about it and to
Yeah.
help us understand
Okay.
this.
And another thing, I haven't spoken, I don't feel like I could, unfortunately, I'm not a very eloquent speaker, okay? And I'm just not, that's another reason.
And we think you speak wonderfully, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
I thank you very much for your time